98.3 FM from 5 a.m. to 11 a.m. as we invoke the thought-provoking discussion, tackle the tough questions, challenge assumption, and give a voice to the unheard. This is the Morning Express on Mainland 98.3 FM.
On the Morning Express.
Good morning.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. My name is Sage Babalola and you are still listening to Health Plus on Mainland 98.3 FM. Earlier in the day, we had Dr. Amadi Dorobuchi of the Dorobuchi Foundation join us to talk about vital organs and comprehensive computer analysis. We went on break and now we are back. I did tell you very briefly before that break that for this segment of the show, or at least for the next 40 minutes of the program, we're going to be talking about community health advocacy and more importantly, how we can get information about health to those in the grassroots. As you know, those in the rural area, there's some sort of gap between them and all of the many progress that is happening in the health environment at this time. And of course, we have stakeholders in the healthcare sector who decided to make this their priority to take the information to the people, something about Muhammad and the mountain, if you understand the metaphor. Well, we are going to be doing community health advocacy, playing our role in assisting those who have made this their priority. As you know, health is one of the primary things that constitute the core of who we are as a people. And unfortunately, as important a concept as health is, we have a lot of people who are left behind when it comes to treatment. And we believe that at this stage of our national life, we need to realize that expending all of our resources to developing treatment for diseases might not be the safest decision to make. Instead, we need to focus more on prevention by means of educating the people on how to minimize risk factors for said diseases, especially those at the grassroots. But there's one very pertinent question that remains. How do we develop creative, easy to understand techniques necessary for disseminating these health information? Well, joining me today on the show to answer this very important question is Dr. Juliet Iwelumo, who is a professor of medicine and an associate director for global health and dissemination at Washington University School of Medicine. She also leads the For Youth by Youth program and the For Girls and Women program. Such a pleasure to have you, Dr. Juliet. Good morning to you.
Good morning, and thank you for having me as well. Thank you, too, to everyone listening in.
Of course, it is such a pleasure. So, I did already lay the foundation of, the primary purpose of this very conversation, primarily finding creative ways to take information to those who mostly constitute the grassroots. But I want us to start from the beginning. I want us to talk about the fact that, there is disease prevalence. I did go through, the World Health Organization and all the many articles that they've put up, and it turns out that there are many diseases that unfortunately Africa as a continent we're heavy on the risk factors for these diseases. So I want you to talk to us about the challenges of the inaccessibility to medical information, the fact that despite the fact that we have social media, we now have better ways of communicating, there's still a large amount of people who still do not have access to necessary information regarding health.
I agree. And if you think of the continuum, right, there's prevention on one side, right, where we can do better in making sure people have access to that information to prevent some of these diseases. But on the other end of it is treatment. And I think what's also frustrating is that many of these diseases actually have treatment opportunities, right? When you think of things like stroke, many of them actually have treatment, but they're inaccessible to many people.
Right.
So oftentimes you hear of brain drain where people leave, right, and go to other places where they have better access to treatment. And it's not accessible to any, you were just talking about people in rural areas. That's not even accessible. The option to even leave anywhere, it's not often accessible to many people in rural areas. And so the best option is prevention. The best option, especially knowing that there are tools to prevent some of those diseases, is really this advocacy we're here for, saying that, if you're having symptoms of stroke, recognize that, do something fast Look at the balance, look at the eyes, look at your facial awareness, look at your arm, look at, just even your balance. Those are just basic symptoms that are easily available and accessible, but oftentimes we lack awareness for it. Hence the need to do some sort of advocacy, particularly at the grassroots, right? Particularly with people that don't even have access to the internet, radio. The reason we're here is because many people listen to you. Many people listen to you for their health information. And so if we know we can't reach people through our publications, then we need to do better as ourselves as health experts to reach people in places that make sense to them. Hence why we're here, for example, today talking to people through the radio so that they have access to some of the health preventive tools that do exist.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Juliet. I see that you've been able to, in collaboration with a lot of stakeholders in the medical industry, come up with ways that you think this information can get to the people. Now, aside from the deficit of information, there's also the issue of a lack of comprehension. A lot of educated people, we can throw all of these terminologies around, we can read and understand what we're reading, but we have to acknowledge the fact that there are a group of people that even if you take this information to them, they don't understand. And so we have to come up with simpler ways to explain these concepts to them and help them understand that all of these big words are just words. It can actually be made easier. So what are some of the techniques that we can employ to help these people understand or
the protein
you watch the show regarding HIV, you talk
that TB, with a better job of cervical cancer access to it, there's still a gap. And so we're curious to know why. Why is it that when resources are available, people are not picking it up? Is it because people are not picking it up because we're not talking to them in ways that make sense to them? We don't know. And I think that's what our platform is trying to say, that we want to give you space to air your thoughts, to give us your vision, especially even give us your creative solutions to address some of this burden. One of the things we often say is all creativity is local. Right? We all have our local music that I'm sure many of the listeners listen to on the radio. We all have our local food that makes sense to us, right? Our local outfits and fashions that make sense to us. Why can't our healing also be local, right? Why can't we have creative solutions, in terms of how we engage in communities that can then be used to promote the uptake of HPV vaccination, to promote the uptake of HPV vaccination, or to do simple things as learning the symptoms of stroke. You understand? Right. One of the things we're doing is using music, for example, to get people to know the symptoms of stroke. There's a group over in the U.S. Led by Dr. Olajide Williams that uses hip-hop music, right, to teach children in schools, primary schools, to learn the symptoms of stroke so that they can recognize it in their grandparents or their elder relatives that they typically may be living with, and be able to act immediately once they see the symptoms. And if you look at the trajectory of that study over time, stroke knowledge increased in children, and they were able to act timely to prevent the burden of stroke in their loved ones. And that's the same thing we're here, saying that there are local tools that we naturally use anyway, like things like our Afrobeat music, our gospel music, the things we already naturally subscribe to in our settings. Could we use that then for help?
Right. So you're saying that we have to find a way to domesticate these solutions so people can really understand. So speaking about some of the campaigns and initiatives that you're currently, working on, for example, the For Youth by Youth initiative, I see that you intend to use, younger people as the messenger, as the foot soldiers, if you allow me to call them that. Is there a reason you're choosing to use that demographic? Do you think that it's easier to listen to the youth, or do you think that they're more physically vibrant, or you think they're more in tune with recent trends and would be able to convert this into a means to properly communicate on health awareness? Why exactly are you choosing to use that demographic as the messengers for health awareness in communities?
Earlier, I talked about brain drain and how many people have focused so much on brain drain. There's brain gain, and you can do a lot with brain gain with young people. Right. When you think about them being the future, right? When you think about even the population we have even in Nigeria right now is very youth driven. There's so many young people that we can access, their strengths, their assets, their originality, their resourcefulness, even their resilience, right? Be able to really be those foot soldiers, like you said, and go into some of these places to get the information out there. When you think of some of the mega events that occur in Nigeria, whether it be music, sporting events, oftentimes the people in the crowd are young. There are older people there, but young people are there. In other words, young people are readily available to do some of this work if only we give them a space to do the work. And I think that's what we've been trying to say. Like, the fact that we are youth-driven, youth-inspired means we want your solutions. We want your originality. We want your novelty. And then we also want to mentor you. So one of the things I always say about myself is that I am where I am because people took a chance to mentor me at the age of 18 and 19. And I think if you can do that for a young person, if you can put enough mentoring, enough guidance to a young person, you can actually set them up for life. I'm a living testimony of what that can look like. And so it's my hope to always give back to young people because somebody did it for me. I stand here because, when I was young and didn't know what I was doing in life, which is often the case with many young people, someone older looked at me and said, well, there's potential in you and let me help nurture that. And I think if we can do that for many more young people, nurture them where they are, meet them where they are, meet their resourcefulness where they are, whether it be music or art or storytelling, just build that for them. And I want to believe those assets then can be translated into health. Right. And so we begin with young people. It doesn't mean we don't want, our elderly people to join us. We do want you to partner with young people. There's reciprocal learning that occur. So if someone, for example, like I said, mentored me at 18 or 19, today we have a reciprocal learning relationship where sometimes he even tells me I am mentoring him. And so there's some times where the learning will switch, right? And you're learning then from young people. We also partner with community-based organizations. I think the key is that you want to always keep someone young in your team for their originality, for their resilience and resourcefulness, because that can make you guys go far.
Right. So how exactly do you access this, or should I say measure the success rate with community awareness? Because there are some health conditions that are very slowly, should I say, phasing away or dying a natural death, and this is not because it's not occurring anymore. It's just like we've made a lot of progress, with health, with medicine, that we're now able to take care of these conditions, and it's not as alarming as it used to be in time past. For example, HIV is a lot of millions of people who are living with the condition right now, and they seem perfectly normal. If they do not tell you that they're dealing with that condition, you would have absolutely no idea. But it doesn't mean that HIV has been phased out. It just means that we have a handle on it. So I'm using this illustration to lead me to the question of how exactly can we use things like that to measure how much success or the impact of this community awareness that is going on currently.
Right. So one of our partners is Nigerian Institute of Medical Research, and we're intentional for a reason. So even if you come up with a creative idea, one of the things I often say, ideas are not enough if you cannot measure their impact over time. And so one of the things we're doing, so if you visit our website, then, we see so one of the things we're doing right now is a bunch of contests, right, around some of these pressing health challenges, whether it be the HPV vaccine contest or the HPV contest or the high blood pressure and stroke contest or the HIV contest, right? So we have all these contests open and we're asking people to send us those creative ideas. It's important to know that it's also a journey, right? A 100-day journey does begin with a day. And so even after you sent the contest, you move then to another phase called a designathon. In fact, we're going to be putting on a mega designathon in April here in Nigeria, one of the first of its kind ever held, right? The fact, which is, and designathons, if people are not familiar, similar to a hackathon, but this time designing health interventions, designing programs. And so if you gave those ideas, if you were one of the people who were selected for your great idea, you will be invited to a designathon, and then those mentoring begins. So it's not just give us your idea and give us your ideas and we connect you to mentors that are going to help you flesh those ideas even more. And after the design-a-thon, which is a week-long event, it moves then over to a boot camp, an innovation boot camp, which is 4 weeks. Again, you can see that journey continues from the idea to the refinement of it, elaboration and refinement of it, to even then the verification of it, right, in the boot camp, where we begin to really go into the field to say, well, this idea, if I actually roll it out, will it make sense? Will it not make sense? What will be my challenge? What would not be my challenge? And once you're done with that and you're still selected as the top people, you then partner with the Nigerian Institute of Medical Health to actually pilot out your idea. And that's where that data becomes crucial. Because it's not enough to just give an idea and you give it once and it's done. You need to go through that journey to see how your idea is rolled out, and then perhaps generate data on its effectiveness, generate data that can then be useful for bigger things the NIMA can do, such as clinical trials, to actually see if your idea is effective. Right. And from there, we continue to nurture you, we continue to mentor you. And, looking at some of the examples of the youth that have joined us, some of our youth were students, for example, when they joined us. And today, some of them are Rhodes Scholars because they tapped into the opportunity. And that's what we're trying to say, that there's an opportunity for young people, communities, everyone to join us. And if you join us on this journey, right, our goal is to get to the end, to make sure you generate that data that can demonstrate the impact of the idea you helped to generate from the beginning.
Right.
So it's a series of steps that ultimately leads to data being generated that would allow us to measure the impact of your idea.
Right. Dr. Juliet, good health doesn't just exist in isolation. And I'm laying a lot of emphasis on those in the rural area, because I would like to assume that those of us in the urban areas, we still have, the privilege or the luxury of assessing healthcare facilities, especially if you're on top of the social ladder. You can very well have a medical doctor check you regularly. They know to check themselves. They understand signs and symptoms. They know what's happening. They can administer first aid, compared to those in the rural area who do not even have the facility to administer certain first aid, even if they have the knowledge. But then back to my initial point, good health doesn't exist in isolation. There's the connection between lifestyle choices, the environment that they're living in, access to potable water, the kind of food that they eat. These are the things that affect their health in the long run. And speaking about, their social status, people in the rural area do not exactly have the financial resources to take care of themselves. They don't know how to, even if they know that you're supposed to eat a balanced diet, is a particular percentage of protein that you're supposed to eat, they don't have the resources to get that. You're supposed to drink clean water, but they don't have access to clean water. So then how can we reconcile these two concepts, their social status, and then trying to get them to be in good health? How do we reconcile these two things?
I think earlier I said start where we are, right? The fact that rural areas are not, having access is really, we can't change that. That is the state that we accept for what it is. It's not today. Many people have talked about how do you reach rural people and make sure they have access to this information. I think using tools like radio, they may not have access to treatment, but they can be listening. Some people in the rural areas might be listening in and wondering, how can I tap into this? And I think that's the first thing we need to be able to do, reach them through mediums that make sense to them, to hopefully share our messages so that they too can know these opportunities are available for them. Right? And then if you even just stick with the rural way, I think there's a quote by Bessie Head that says we tolerate strangers because the things we love about ourselves cannot be touched by them. I think for far too long we tend to tolerate strange ways with our healing, as if health, for example, is an individual right? It's only, it's something you do at the individual level and not inform the collective, often a collective event. And I think that's what we're also here to say, that even where you are in a rural setting, there's a collective that you can tap into for your health. Health doesn't have to be something you do alone. Right? If you feel you have something, that is worrying you about your high blood pressure or your stroke, there's a collective that you should tap into seek advice from to generate the resources you need. And if you don't have that, then join groups like ours that is asking to be able to, there's even trying to do that, right? So one of the initiatives you haven't mentioned is our For Communities by Communities initiative. It's brand new. It started this year, where we're trying to say, okay, if we've been successful tapping into youth populations, right? Tapping into youth-driven, youth-inspired innovations. If we've been successful tapping into mother-daughter relationship, which is natural in our settings, right? Mothers and daughters connecting and talking about everything, and hopefully now about health. What about our communities? How do we tap into community-inspired, community-driven initiatives? That's really what we're here doing this year, to say, start where you are, build a collective, build a team, and come join us. Our goal is to mentor you so that you then become the influencer in your rural setting. We need rural people to become involved in this work, because we cannot do it only in urban settings. There's a demographic transition also happening where people are leaving rural areas to urban and vice versa. And so we need influencers that are even in rural settings spreading this message along so that people can listen and hopefully do something together with their health.
Right. The show once again is Health Plus on Mainland 98.3 FM. My name is Sage Babalola. I have been having a conversation with Dr. Juliet Iwelumo, who is a professor of medicine and an associate director for global health and dissemination at Washington University School of Medicine. We are talking about community health awareness. How can we find creative ways to get information about health to those who do not have access to this information? And we've been exploring a number of considerations, talking about using the youth, the young people as the messenger, talking about making this information simpler so that those at the rural areas can actually fully comprehend what we're telling them. Sometimes it's not even an information deficit, it's a lack of comprehension of the information that they have available to them. We also spoke about how, the social status of these individuals in a way sort of negates the information that they have. The sense of community, for example, is something that we need to consider. How to make the environment clean. Having a clean environment is a collective responsibility. Dumping of refuse indiscriminately is a collective responsibility. How to curb that is a collective responsibility. Community health awareness is a collective responsibility. And how can we drive all of these initiatives is the primary objective of the conversation that we're having on radio this morning. Don't forget that we are streaming live on our Facebook platform, Mainland 98.3 FM, or facebook.com/Mainland 98.3 FM. And you can, of course, take advantage of the live chat option to send in your questions, your contributions, and your recommendations if you like. If you have a conversation or question rather for Dr. Juliet, by all means, use our Facebook platform to send that question in. So, Dr. Juliet, now back to conversations. How can we ensure a sustainability of this initiative? The first time, the excitement, right, would cause the curiosity, would cause people to participate. Let's see what this is about. But then curiosity fades off after a while. As human beings, we have a desire for more. So how exactly can we keep people interested in these conversations? How can we keep the conversation going? How can we make sure that we continue to push this or just sustain this initiative and this information that we're trying to get to those who really, really need the information?
This is probably the question of my life, because I am also a sustainability researcher. I'm interested in how to make things last. And so from the onset, it's important for people to know that 50% of initiatives will never last.
Right.
So even if, I'm here with all my initiatives, many more people come to with the initiatives, the reality is that many of us will not last. And I think part of the work we're doing in my group is to really change that. Like, why is that? Especially when you think of all the resources, funding, for example, that are poured into a lot of these initiatives. We're talking about millions of dollars in some cases, and yet they don't last. I think it's a disservice to communities. It's even unethical. Why even build up these projects just for it not to last? In fact, you might have been better never come into a community if your intention was to not last. And so from the work we do, we even begin from a place of planning. Right? Our people perish for lack of vision. We begin from a place of planning, recognizing that we cannot do this work alone. So one of the things I talked about is the collective. People will matter for how you last. Program champions will matter. Influencers will matter. It doesn't matter whether they're rural or urban. It's important to do this as a collective. Right? You don't want only one expert come in to say, do it this way and that way and it's done. No, we're intentional in calling ourselves for youth by youth because we want to be collective. Intentional about for girls and women because it has to be collective. Or now for communities by communities because it has to be collective. And once you have that in place, once you have your champions, your influencers collectively doing this together, you need to be willing to learn. Right? You have to be willing to learn and listen. Because you don't have all the knowledge. The knowledge actually may come from within. This is what I was saying about the importance of dialogue, importance of engaging in conversation with people that are young, for example, people that are old. There's a need for that dialogue and learning, giving people the space, the voice to air their own concern because they're the ones living, for example, with some of these health conditions. So they know what's working for themselves and their community. And so we need to do better at learning and listening. And once we do that, we need to adapt. The A of my plan, you need to be willing to change. You understand? Change is inevitable. Every single day we wake up changing and adapting to our surroundings. Right? Many of us are adapting now to the high cost of rice, adapting now to fall. In all things you will adapt. And so why not expect our health issues, our health programs to change? You will change, and that's a natural condition of this plan. And then ultimately, the end of it is to nurture assets. Oftentimes we approach communities, approach rural, approach even health systems from a deficit perspective, as if there are no assets worth nurturing. So the conversation is often around brain drain, and so now I've said change it to brain gain. How can we gain from rural settings? How can we gain from young people? How can we gain from communities to do something about how they're there? We have assets that we can nurture. How do we amplify those assets to begin to address some of these pressing challenges? You find that if you have a plan, if you have a vision, and you can look at some of the programs that have existed over the years, they often all have a plan, people, learning, adapting, nurturing, that has existed and enabled them to last over time. It's new work that we're doing and intentional in what we're doing here in Nigeria because we do not want to fall into that statistics of not being able to last.
Right.
After we've done all this initiative.
Right. Dr. Julia, just like you said, there's a number of non-governmental organizations who do things like this, who try to go into communities and relate with people directly, speak the language that they understand. In your perspective, I mean, you have interacted with a lot of NGOs who are, really big on community health awareness, right? So what do you think that we need to do differently? Because it's a partnership, it's a collaboration, and the whole point of a collaboration is to bring in different perspectives, different local, domestic NGOs are not doing.
Some do have great intentions, great ideas, and to them funding. They may even have great plans to do some of this good work. Collaboration. You gotta be able. Who knows what ideas you can collectively create so that they last? So one of the things we're intent is like NIMA, because it's doing it alone. I think the time is ripe. I think the fierce urgency even of doing more collaboration in Nigeria.
Right. I want to speak about a specific initiative of yours, the For Girls and Women. You are a professor of health, where we for girls and women safety, but then you have the health sector regarding women and children.
Remember called me from the blues, and my case occurred around June. Daughter of her mother once disclosed that you were experiencing this. So what ends up happening is that many who talk to her, we begin to tolerate it if only she talked to her mother. Anybody, even if the initiative is trying to at least get to the bottom of cervical cancer, to get girls vaccinated and to get their mental health. One of the new ones we have is that the mother-to-no child deaths in Nigeria. We need to collaborate with you, for example. Now that I've heard about your initiative, we need to adapt our programs and nurture collectively the assets you have, I have, 2024.
Everybody's problem, right? Or should I say, have a problem about, having more human capital resources, right? The young people. But then there's also entrenched in the mind of these people, they then go through a cesarean session because somebody in the complete perspective
is that they're passive recipients of these information. And so you have the health experts coming and telling them, do it this way, do it that way. Don't do it this way. The way you're doing it is terrible. And information.
Right.
Even if they don't know, and that's okay. Because come and change the conversation around. Don't just drive it, but actually with the idea and you walk away. No, you will be mentored, you will be guided, but we want you to be the influencer. We want you to be the leader. Ways we can do it, starting with so that's why it's important that we need some recipients. Communities should not only be passive recipients; they should be partners, and they should ultimately lead as well.
Right. I mean, I totally agree with you. If this is going to work, we also, as medical practitioners and broadcasters, or those who are enthusiastic about health, be willing to understand these people, understand their culture, understand their music, for example, understand the kind of food that they eat, understand the kind of poetry that they like, the kind of art that they like, and then incorporate the knowledge that we're trying to share to them into these culture, so that it's a language to them. How to these communities and learning. This is the key, as the messengers incorporate their own culture.
I train people. Someone trained me, so it's important that I train another generation that's going to do the work, because I can't do it alone. I always come back to a collective. It's important that today you might be here in my situation doing the same thing, and somebody else may be doing it for sickle cell, or some of the other issues that I'm not even addressing, but are common in our community. Because like you said, you're already a broadcaster doing this work. You probably just need some support to be able to do this more in a different way. And so that's where we come in, to even listen to you, to see where you are and support you so that you can be effective in the work you do. I think the time is right to do better with training that's reciprocal, because I also want to learn, how do I do better communicating with communities? And you're already doing it right through the radio. And so training that is reciprocal, where we're both supporting each other, it's the next generation, the next frontier of learning that I know I am very excited to engage on through this journey. One where I too can learn from you in terms of how I do my job better.
Right. Well, in a few minutes we would have to, wrap the conversation up. But then let's talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about you, Dr. Juliet. You are a professor of medicine, and you have the privilege of traveling around the world, trying to absorb as much knowledge as you can, and bringing it back to the home country to also impact this knowledge on people who would ensure continuity. Because there's this notion that medical practitioners don't see people as people. We just see them as patients, as subjects, right? So how is this experience with people, this one-on-one experience with people, wanting to know who they are, what they believe in, so that you also can be a part of them and teach them what you know? How has this evolved your perception of humanity?
Child was from my Haddington. Eventually she did. So I stand here as a lineage of a woman, God rest. And so when you know that as your lineage, persistence becomes just natural. And one thing I always say, even to be able to do this work, is that we have failed so many times before we got here. Like, in other words, even though these opportunities are available today, what many people won't know are the many, many opportunities that failed, right? And never will see the light of day, because that wasn't what the funders or people were interested in. I think of some of the work we wanted to do with marketplaces, for example. It failed. But if you know anything about marketplaces, that's where everybody goes to in Nigeria. Maybe one day we'll resurrect it. But those are some of the things that have allowed me personally to persist. Right? I want to always be the champion for health. I want to be able to really get to the grassroots levels, because if I think of the people that surrounded my grandmother, right, and made it possible that today she gave birth to, a child that gave birth to another child. It's important that we surround people with knowledge, even at their lowest, even when they don't have access to that information, and help them never give up, because you never know the dividends that can be paid later on. And you were talking about, I could have gone anywhere, why come back home? Charity, like they always say, begins at home. I am born and raised here, and it's important to me that every knowledge that I learned comes back home. And I left as a teenager, and I remember my first experience when I came back. People always told me I was the one to change, that the system is the way it is, and I just could never understand, as an 18, 19-year-old then, that, why is it a makeshift house, for example, a hospital? Or why is a woman, my auntie in particular, who had very terrible end-stage diabetes, in a makeshift house that looks like I'm being told as a hospital. I just knew that there were so many to give back to, whatever was necessary, learn whatever was necessary to ensure that, our ways of life, our collective ways of life impacts our health. And so that's sort of what drives me. I am concerned, I am hopeful, for the unity we have, for the diversity, there's strength in our diversity, and for the learning that can occur when we come together. I see it every time when I engage with youth, Nigerian youth, and it's my hope that as we continue to do the work now, really truly engage in the communities, those learning, right, those changes we're going to go through, the connections we're going to build with people would ultimately lead to impactful health that changes lives.
All right. Well, Dr. Juliet, it's been more than a pleasure having you join us this morning. Dr. Juliet Iwelumo is a professor of medicine and an associate director for global health and dissemination at Washington University School of Medicine. She also leads the For Youth by Youth program and the For Girls and Women program. And you would fully be able to appreciate this program because it was somewhat born out of personal experiences. So there's some sort of human face to all of these programs, which is wonderful. Dr. Juliet, once again, it's been a pleasure. We look forward to working more with you, collaborating with you, and doing something for the community for a fact.
I look forward to learning. I look forward to learning from you as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Juliet. Have a wonderful day, and I look forward to more conversations.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. All right. Well, that's it for Health Plus for today. Very interesting conversation with a professor of medicine from Washington University. We spoke about community health awareness. How can we take information to those in the rural area, more importantly? And even when we take this information to them, how can we make sure that they comprehend, they understand what we have taken to them? And even when they understand, how do we change their orientation to ensure acceptance of the information that we have taken to them? So it's a lot of work to do. It's a hydra-headed situation, and we have to deal with each situation one at a time. But at the end of the day, the objective here is to ensure collective health and collective safety. You can understand that a healthy community is a wealthy community, and only healthy people can be masters of innovation. My name is Sage Babalola. This is Health Plus for today on Mainland 98.3 FM. Forgive my manners. I don't believe I said Happy New Month when we started the show. It's just a lot of things to do, and sometimes you just, you lag a little bit. So a Happy New Month to you. I'm pretty sure my colleagues, Omobola Sandra for one, would definitely have opened the program, wishing you a Happy New Month. But then it's still okay if I do the same. So happen in the month. And we, Mainland 98.3 FM, will be here to keep you informed, to keep you entertained, and to make sure that you continue to make the right decisions about your health, about your safety, about your finances, among many a thriving community on social media. We drop information on there, breaking news. We have avenues where you can even talk to other people. You could talk to other members of community from different parts of the world, share ideas, form your own little tribe where you can share information, maybe even become friends. That is the whole point of the social media. So please check us out on Facebook at Mainland 98.3 FM. We're also on YouTube. We have our videos on there as well at Mainland 98.3 FM. And then there's the X platform, or Twitter, if that's what you still recognize it as, at Mainland FM. And following us on Twitter is very, very important because we have an initiative on there. We host X Spaces. I believe once every 2 hours from the station, we have guests who will join us. We talk about these matters. We also allow you to speak to all the people who would be on there just to share ideas, right? So join us on or follow us rather on X so that you'll be notified anytime we're hosting these spaces. Thank you so much for being a part of the program. But
on Twitter
Nothing to
Mainland FM.
My name is Sage Babalola. President Tinubu tells Labour going on. Nigeria promises transparency as green distribution starts next week. Peter Obi carpets CBN, says increasing MPR, CRR would further worsen Nigeria's economy. On the foreign scene, more than 100 die in crowd near Gaza aid convoy. Navalny's family lay opposition leader to rest in Moscow. In sport, Nigerian wonder kid Ibrahim Hafeez set for European sojourn with Norwegian giant. Luis Enrique believes PSG will be better without Kylian Mbappe. That is the headline news on
Comes crashing down. Lagos. And this is Mainland 98.3 FM.
You didn't see that coming, did you? Good health, wellness, and healthy lifestyle from the experts. Join Dr. Akpabio and his team of nutrition experts 11:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. for informative, educative, and insightful tips to a world of wellness and vitality. Don't miss it. Brought to you by Enterprises Next Level for a healthier you. Every Friday, 11:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. Don't miss it. Useful tips on good health, wellness, and healthy lifestyle from the experts. Join Dr. Akpabio and his team of nutrition experts.
Good morning again and welcome back. I did tell you that Health Conversations news on Mainland it airs from 11:30 a.m. all the way to 12 noon, where we have conversation. Earlier, about 2 weeks ago, we started the conversation on why people get sick. We spoke about the environment and how we can deal with all of this. It was a very interesting conversation. And then the program that is hosted every Tuesday, free medical checkup and consultation, where we are Fam Marvis and of course answer in the 21st century. But before we start asking questions, good morning to both of you. All right, so about breast cancer and closing the gap, creating opportunity for information have such high mortality cancer. So it's great that we're bringing this conversation back. So let's start the conversation. Talk to us about, even as a medical practitioner, as you know, somebody who's in the pharmaceutical industry, how you feel that despite all the progress we've made in the healthcare sector, we still have such high mortality.
Like you said, despite the like have 10 women in your life, can important ones now are up to 10, right? So I put it to you now that, do you know, they don't want to believe or hear the fact that they believe when you don't hear negativity more, it doesn't come to you. I reject you. I forbid victims to about it. The only thing we can do now is how do we work to avoid it? How do we work to prevent and treat these cancers when they come? Most especially, like I always say, and we always say, prevention is always cancer is here to stay and is here already. So what do we do about it? That's what we are looking at.
All right, so let's open the conversation properly. What do we need to know first of all?
Well, you see, the 21st century is actually jet planes and all that. And in short, you find out that it's like the world going on a fast lane. And now all these things have their own consequences. Now, how does cancer actually form? Cancer forms in the body because of majorly the kind of things that we eat, the kind of environment that we live in. And so these are the things that are actually throwing up all these health challenges. Now, cancers come because the free radicals, what we call free radicals, are actually things that are made out of toxins as a result of the processing of even the food that we eat and all that, that throw up the existence of these free radicals that bombard the body cells. Because cancer is actually made from is actually from cells that are growing abnormally. They are not growing in the normal way. And so because of the continuous bombardment of free radicals day in, day out on the cells of the body, you find out that the cells begin to have some problem and now start to grow abnormally. These are the things that give rise to what we should be able to take in as food. We will discover that many of the things that we're in short, close to about 70% of the food that we eat right now are things that the human body is not actually conditioned to process. That's it. Because originally the human body is actually of fresh free radicals to our bodies, and these free radicals are the things that are bombarding the body cells every day.
All right. So now that we know what the problems are, let's start to discuss how we can actively, deal with what we can consider the risk factors.
All right. Like he mentioned, start with the free radicals is something that is naturally generated in our body through metabolic reactions and exposure to environmental toxins such as pollution or radiation.